Welcome to NeurON Air, the official podcast of Neurotech UFT, where we bring you the latest breakthroughs in neurotechnology straight from the experts. From groundbreaking researchers and cutting-edge engineers to pioneering clinicians and bold startup founders, we explore the innovations shaping the future of neurotech.
We are on a quest to spark curiosity, fuel conversations, and inspire the next generation of neuroprofessionals. Whether you're a student, a tech enthusiast, or just neurocurious, you're in the right place.
In this episode, our guest is Dr. Alison Smith, a distinguished neuroscientist and venture capital-backed founder whose career bridges academic research and cutting-edge innovation in mental health technology. Dr. Smith co-founded Roga, a neurotechnology startup developing a wearable device for anxiety treatment. Under her leadership, Roga secured over $1.7 million in funding, gained recognition from Forbes and Business Insider, and was named one of Fast Company's world-changing ideas. Dr. Smith got accepted into highly competitive entrepreneurship programs and leading incubators, including University of Waterloo's Velocity, University of Toronto's Creative Distraction Lab, and Ontario Brain Institute's NERV program. Currently, Dr. Smith is a venture fellow at HaloHealth, a Canadian physician angel investor group, where she supports early-stage health tech startups and helps with deal flow and conducting due diligence.
Thank you, Alison, for joining us. We are glad to have you here. And we have so many exciting questions for you. You're so interesting as a person. We can't wait to get started.
Alright, we're going to dive right in. So as we were preparing for today's conversation, we saw that you have an inspiring journey spanning across academia as well as deep tech entrepreneurship. So could you briefly walk us through that arc as well as what inspired your career and your mission?
Yeah. So in my undergrad at the university, at York University, I was a kinesiology and health science major, but I was also an athletic therapy student. So every course in the course schedule was mandated for me. I didn't get to choose any of the courses that I was taking, except for one in fourth year. And so when I reached the fourth year, I thought, what am I going to take? I get to choose one course. And so I chose basic neurophysiology because I've always been interested in the nervous system, neurological injury in particular. And so when I took that course, I just fell in love with it. And the course instructor was incredibly engaging. He invited me to do my master's. And then I rolled into my PhD, and at that point he had taken an appointment at Waterloo, University of Waterloo, and so I followed, and I ended up doing my PhD in Waterloo, and then stayed on as an adjunct faculty member teaching anatomy and physiology. But I always knew that I wanted to be in private industry. I wanted to be a businesswoman, but I didn't know how to make that happen because you can't have productive conversations with other academics. They've only been in academia. So when I chose to leave academics, it was actually a pretty fast transition. I reached out to a CEO at a neurotech company, and I thought that he was inviting me for just a chat in a tour. Turns out that it was a job interview, and I was given a job on the spot.
Wow.
So I was a neuroscientist, building brain stimulation wearables for early dementia and cognitive performance. And this is back in 2019, so I was traveling so much for this company, just talking about the science behind their product. And while I was in Silicon Valley speaking at a conference, I was approached by who became my co-founder. He had an idea to build a beautiful, simple wearable device to treat anxiety, and that idea sparked my interest because I was dealing with a great deal of anxiety. And within 3 months, we decided to start the company together. And we were able to commercialize our first product. I was with the company for 5 years. I recently moved on. But one of the things that I really appreciate about my career is the amount of change and new opportunity and experience that I've had an opportunity to have in my life.
Wow, that's really inspiring. And one thing is that I think at U of T, what we do is we can choose any and whatever course. So it's really interesting to hear, like, except one, all of the other coursework was mandated. Yes. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, we complain about not being able to choose, and we can choose almost everything. So the fact that we had one choice is pretty surreal for us. What initially drew you to the intersection of neuroscience, technology, and business? All of these combined.
Well, so I always knew from very young that I wanted to be in the business world. Didn't know how to make that happen because I was in STEM. And so the transition isn't entirely clear. But what has been a good advantage for all of us is how quickly technology has changed and how accessible everything is now. You can be an early stage startup and be very scrappy. You can be a technical founder. You can find a way to get your first product on the market by doing the work yourself. You don't have to rely on really expensive third-party operators anymore in order to pull it off. So that's the main advantage nowadays. And just really thankful that I had an opportunity to do that. So just a little bit of a backstory. When I was in grad school, I ended up contracting something called Lyme disease. So that's a bacterial infection that gets into your nervous system and throughout your body. And I had never heard of it before. I had no idea what a tick was. I didn't know that we had it here in Ontario. And so when I got really sick in my first year of my PhD, I had no idea what was happening. No physicians knew what was happening. It took 5 years to get a diagnosis. And so by that time, I ended up very ill. And so that really slowed down my ability to grow my career. I was able to get through the PhD, but then that was it. I was off of work and out of the game for years. So when I transitioned out of academia into the private industry, and I met this person at that conference, and we thought about, are we going to start this company? I was taking a calculated risk. Most people would not take the risk to build a company, but I was in a predicament where I had just returned to full-time work, and I was thinking, how can I make this career as big as possible, as fast as possible? And the way that you can do that is through a startup.
Yeah. So true. Wow, it's quite beautiful how you sort of turned your struggles into your advantage, essentially, to like rise up ahead in your career.
Yeah, so you did mention a startup, and you co-founded a startup called Roga with this revolutionary mission of kind of revolutionizing anxiety treatment. And I was wondering, how did it turn into a venture capital-backed startup?
Yes. Oh gosh. So, just to let everyone know, because I had that chronic illness, it created a clinical anxiety disorder. So I went from being an incredibly independent individual to not independent anymore. And not just because of the chronic illness and the incredible fatigue and other symptoms that you're experiencing, but when you have a mental health disorder, it is incredibly overwhelming and it's hard to address. And we don't have really good tools to manage it so that you can get your tail back to working. So there's medication, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, but we need to find other strategies. And so when this idea came about of building a brain stimulation wearable to help with changing how the brain is operating and how it is firing in certain areas that are related to anxiety, can you modulate that activity? Can you calm it down so that a person feels more resilient? And you can. So there has been science for decades looking at ways that you can stimulate the nervous system to reduce anxiety or depression. And so I knew that the science existed, and so we leaned on that when we were developing our first product. There were also some other predicate products on the market as ready that looked pretty scary. So we wanted to make it a little bit more friendly looking, something that our first design was, it looks like you're wearing a pair of Apple headphones, wired Apple headphones. It's just a white cord.
Wow.
So we've got 2 stimulation electrodes behind the ears, white cord to a very small stimulator, you plug it into your phone. So when you're walking around, no one knows that, or if you're on TTC, public transit, no one knows that you are receiving stimulation to help you.
Wow.
You could be at work, at your computer, none of your colleagues are going to know that you're helping to regulate your nervous system. And it was something that you would just wear for 20 to 60 minutes a day. But how did it translate into this capital, like venture capital startup? It was a lot of hard work. The first 2 years we were in stealth mode. That means we weren't telling anybody what we were building. We kept our full-time jobs. And so this was happening, we started in 2020, so we were all dealing with the early stages of COVID. We were all sheltering in place. There was nothing else to do but work. So I was doing my full-time job throughout the day and then building Roga at night and on the weekends. And I spent the first 2 years building our FDA and our European medical device technical files. And these are huge technical files. The FDA was 1,500 pages, the European was 6,000 pages. I'm a PhD neuroscientist, I'm a technical writer. So I have a superpower for writing really boring technical documents. And so that's how I spent my time. And once we had those files created, and once we had our medical device quality management system created and certified, we then started hunting down accelerators that would take us in. So the first accelerator to accept us was called ODX. It was in Silicon Valley. They gave us 125 grand USD for 7% equity. It's a traditional YC deal. And it was a year-long program. Wonderful. As soon as we got into that, we both quit our jobs and went into Roga full-time. I then received 100 grand from the Ontario Brain Institute a couple months after that. And then within a year, we launched. We couldn't raise venture capital without being on the market because it's really difficult for investors to have faith in a hardware product. So we had to get to the market with our minimum viable product first, and then we could start raising money. And we ended up raising 1.7 million. And it went through venture capital firms, through institutions, and angel investors.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And I think one point that really got to me was the fact that you were really focusing on the user experience, like those headphone-like look on the user. I think it really matters for people to design for people.
Absolutely, and also really leaning on early stage AI. So our first app that accompanied the hardware product was just providing a library of relaxing content.
Wow.
But when you're trying to predict what someone wants to listen to, it's impossible. So fantastic, like great timing. AI models hit the market, and we started leaning on them, and we created this AI meditation app that you can speak to. You can tell it what you're feeling stressed and anxious about, and it will create a bespoke guided meditation for you, speaking directly to you.
Wow, super personalized, right?
Yeah, and a huge money saver for us. It's very cost intensive when you're creating content for an app. So this just creates it on the spot. We could save a lot of money and help people more effectively.
So it works for the business, works for the people.
Yeah.
It's the perfect balance. Thank you for sharing.
So your solution is essentially twofold: a brain stimulation wearable and the app with guided meditation. What were some of the early challenges or feedback that you faced? There must have been criticisms, people telling you this is not good. What was that?
Early criticisms. So multi-staged. So customer feedback The original, so we had ear hooks that go around the ear in order to stabilize the electrode on the skin behind the ear. If you don't do that, then you could easily pull off the electrode from the ear. The early ear hook design was pretty rigid, not entirely comfortable. There was a little bit of a learning curve with how to get it on the ear. If you think of any of those ear pods that come with the wrap around, there's a little bit of a learning curve to that.
Yeah.
So we changed to a more malleable, soft silicone ear hook, and brought the lead wire from the back to the front. So it was much more user friendly, and the app had, like, user experience in the app is ever evolving. The first app was just pretty basic. It's just a library of content. But eventually it turned into providing data to our users. We deployed validated psychological questionnaires within the app so you can track your progress over time. Eventually we were going to put sensors into the headset so you can track biomarkers that are associated with anxiety over time. It's really fun getting feedback from people. So that's on the customer side. But on the investor side, it's so different. They really want to see meaningful user data in traction. How many people are using the app? How many people are actually using the device? Revenue. Those are two very difficult things to address, keeping your customers happy and getting investors interested.
Wow, like, I didn't even think of that distinction, how feedback can be different based on who your target audience is, whether it's investors or customers.
Yeah.
And the constant sort of feedback loop, the iteration. It's like you can start off with something relatively simple and build on it until it becomes. It's quite interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and it's one of the most important things that early stage startups need to know. You need to get the first product on the market as fast as possible. You're never going to like it. You're going to be a little bit embarrassed about it. But it's better to iterate based on user feedback than taking a guess on what they want.
Yeah, I think that's one advice that I've been hearing like over and over again. And that also, I believe, is what gives the startups the advantage over like big firms and enterprises, right? Because they can't do it as fast and they can't get it in the market as fast because they have like a lot of like processes going on.
It's the best part about being in a startup is how fast you can move.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So switching gears a little bit, from your perspective, what do you think is the role is for neurotechnology in the clinical treatment for mental health disorders?
We are only at the very beginning stages of using neurotech for neuromodulation for mental health. It's such an exciting time, but it's baby stages. I can't imagine where we're going to be even in 10 years from now. So we're only offering very simple strategies that will change neuronal firing in certain ways. There can be pulse stimulation using cranial electrotherapy stimulation or transcranial alternating current stimulation. Other companies are offering transcranial direct current stimulation, which is just turn the current on and keep it on. There's a product called Flow Neuroscience that has market clearance in Europe only at the moment for major depressive disorder using TDCS. I just think it's so incredibly important to find ways to develop non-invasive strategies to help people who are suffering with mental health disorders and ones that they can use at home.
Yeah, so it's more accessible.
Yeah.
I see. And with the medical devices, there are a lot of regulations in place, and I think you would want to kind of mention that as well for our listeners. And navigating the regulatory approval processes are often like one of the biggest hurdles for startups, especially in the neurotech space, right? How did you approach compliance across different jurisdictions like the US, the European Union, as well as Canada?
So it's an incredibly difficult but doable process, but it's an expensive process. So first off, we decided to hit the market as a consumer wearable for stress and burnout initially. You don't want to use any kind of medical language in your marketing materials if you don't have medical device clearance yet. So we weren't allowed to use the word anxiety until you get market clearance. So we chose to hit the market as a consumer wearable in order to bring revenue in order to help feed the ultimate goal of becoming a medical device. Now the process of applying for medical device status, I heavily leaned on my expertise as a neuroscientist and a technical writer. So people don't do, like companies don't do this. You don't have one person building a technical file. That's just insane. But we didn't have the capital to get through this regulatory process. So I had to build the tech files myself. I had to build our quality management system. What I chose to do was I hired an RA QA consultant. I had him make nothing. I just had him tell me what had to be built, and I built it myself. Okay, so he was there during you get audited when you're trying to get certified for your medical device quality management system according to a standard called ISO 13485. This is what you start living. You start living like two acronyms at this point. And every time you go for an audit, it's $10,000 USD. So you need to go prepared. These documents need to be incredibly accurate, but it's doable. You just make sure that you have the right people on your team that can do these scrappy things. And I love being examined. I wouldn't have been in school for as long as I was without enjoying the process. So when you're in an audit, it was fun for me. It's like, try and find something that is incorrect here. So I really enjoyed myself. And it's just a slow process getting through because it's the money. It's the money. And right now there is zero help for early stage startups in Canada to get through this regulatory process. You're really left on your own. We really need some assistance for startups here.
Wow, I mean, the entire process sounds super intimidating, but sounds like you enjoyed yourself. And one thing I can tell is you really trust in your work and the hours that you put in, so that like even if anyone is out there like questioning, you do have an answer.
I mean, once you've been through your undergrad and all of the grad school, and you have been so heavily questioned, or if you present your work at a conference, and people are not kind.
Yeah.
They want to find fault in your data collection, so it's a little bit combative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to that behavior, and it really gives you an advantage when you transition from academics into private industry.
Great point, yeah.
I love your confidence. Like usually, when I'm facing like an exam, it's very nerve-wracking for me. I'm not like, let's get started.
But it's the only time that you have to really demonstrate what you know. I'm not competing against anyone else in the classroom. I'm competing against myself.
That's a very good mindset to have. And speaking of capital, you mentioned you were able to raise 1.75 million USD. That's not a small feat at all. What did that fundraising journey look like? Was it harder than building the medical device itself, or not as hard? And did you have any allies that made that whole process more manageable?
I would say that participating in as many accelerators and incubators, I really went out of my way. So I was a part of the Creative Destruction Lab, Velocity, Mars Venture Services, one of the zones at TMU called BVZ. I really went out of my way. Like, not only are you building a company, but I had to carve out time to participate in all of these things because you have to grow your network. You've got to get allies on your side. So that was good just in terms of introductions. I would say the most productive introductions came from fellow founders. You really need to meet as many founders in your space as possible, because once they find funding, then they might intro you to their VC. And that's what happened for us. Many of my founder friends would just introduce me, and that's how we got our first VC. But getting an investor to say yes took me about a year and a half to figure that out. They ultimately don't care about the product. So you need to develop the language and demonstrating meaningful data to show that you actually do have a viable business here. That's what they're investing in. They're not investing in the product, they're investing in you as an individual and your ability to build a business.
So for them, it's more about the value generated, very like monetary value.
Oh yeah, heavily, and the trust in you. So if you're going to be a founder, it would be better if you had more of a charismatic personality so that you can convince people and get people on your side. You need to be a talker.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Quite insightful.
Yeah, and I do think we're going to come back to that point as to like what the VCs are looking for in especially early stage startups. But I do want to go back to what you've done for your startup Roga. And I do have a list here. So apparently you led Roga through fundraising, regulatory affairs, quality assurance, clinical trials, IP strategy, as well as manufacturing. That's a mouthful. And I was wondering, which of these areas required the steepest learning curve for you, and how did you manage to scale up?
It's the RAQA, it's the regulatory and the quality management. I had never built a technical file before, I'd never built a quality management system before, so I spent a great deal of my time reading about it, talking to people. I heavily leaned on my consultant. But what was so funny is that even though I had a consultant, it's not like documents were not being shared with me. I didn't know what these documents looked like. So I had to spend a lot of time searching for documents and templates online to understand what I was even building. So it was incredibly time intensive and a steep learning curve for sure.
I see, and like based on what you said, it seems like your research persona would show up at times. And
yeah, big advantage. Building all of the documents to stand up a manufacturing line, that's something I've never done before. But it's doable. You can find the documents, you can talk to people. Yeah.
And we have a really successful example right here with us. Yeah, thank you so much.
It seems like you have two sides to you. There's this academic neuroscientist side, and then there's this businesswoman side. How did you perhaps balance these two sides of yours and to the sort of uncertain and rapidly changing startup world on a day-to-day?
Well, luckily, the kind of startup that I was involved with, when you're building a medical device company, it's highly regulated, and so you have to be heavily academic anyway. You have to follow the rules, you have to be interested in following the rules, and I am, because in a PhD it's very rigid. You live a very rigid life as an academic, and so the transition wasn't foreign to me. What was new to me was how to talk to investors. That's totally out of my comfort zone. I'd be sweating, so nervous. The stomach was just clenched for the first 6 months of going into these meetings because their language is so different. But I just kept reminding myself, this is just a language. You have been through more difficulty in your life than this, so just give yourself a little bit of grace, study up, and have as many conversations as possible. So in order to raise that kind of capital, and because I'm female, you have to do more conversations than typically.
Mm-hmm.
So right at the moment, female founders only raise maybe about 3% of venture capital that's available. So it meant that I had to have 300 conversations to raise that money. But instead of looking at that as a negative, I looked at it as a positive because I could really hone the pitching skills.
I think you're seeing like a pattern where you turn the negative into the positive internally, so you can kind of cope, and that's a really good strategy to have internally, I must say. And it's crazy how from being nervous about talking to investors, now you've actually switched to the other side.
Yeah.
From a startup co-founder, you have now transitioned to essentially a healthcare tech venture capitalist.
Yes.
Could you give us some insight about that journey and what you look forward to learning as a venture fellow at HaloHealth?
And yeah, it's another transition. There is another steep learning curve for me. So during my founder years, I really ended up enjoying conversations with investors. I got very interested in the process of figuring out venture deals as a founder, but I also started participating as, say, like a startup pitch judge. I wanted to be on the other side and help founders to find the funding that they need. I would love to help female founders understand how to make things happen a lot faster. And so I'm only at the early stage now. It's only in recent history that I left my own startup. But I've had some really key doors open for me in order to head to the other side for venture capital.
What sort of, being on the other side, your perspective must have changed about startup founders. Something that you saw, like you must have been annoyed about certain things that investors do, but on the other side, it might have made sense. Is that true?
Well, now, since now I'm an ex-founder and I get to be on the VC side, I get to be more of an empathetic person. I get to be someone who's going to facilitate because I've lived it. I've lived being a founder. I know the pain of it. And now I can be someone that can help people to find the funding that they need, but I can also be a person that they can lean on for advice and direction. So I've always enjoyed supporting people, being in a teacher, leadership role. I was at Waterloo for 9 years as an instructor. I like providing that kind of assistance. But now it's like there's so much energy around being in the startup world, and I'm happy that I'm able to stay there.
Thank you. It's quite an inspiring journey.
And it almost sounds like, for the lack of a better word, the startup founders who are coming to you, they do have an ally from the inside because you've lived through it yourself, that you know the difficulty of it. And it's so great to hear that. And I guess, you do want to know more about what you look for in an early stage startup when you're doing the investing.
Yeah.
Is it the strength of the founding team? And I do think you briefly mentioned that, they look into the founders and not necessarily the product itself. Is it the profitability of the venture itself or early traction? What does venture capital look into in a startup?
So when you're trying to find pre-seed stage startups to invest in, what you want to see is that the founders are proactive and at the forefront. And this is where charismatic personality really helps. Because you want to see passion in the founder, you want to see that they understand the technology and their go-to-market strategy and how are they going to get this on the market. Do they have the skills and the wherewithal to move as fast as possible? Can they show us that they have data? None of the data is real. in a pre-seed startup. But do they understand the terminology at least? Can they give us a realistic projection? But we know that none of the numbers are real. Like cost of acquiring a customer, something called a CAC. You're not going to know that until you're on the market and going through that process. But things that I look for, realism. So I've built a medical device and got it to market. So my line of questioning is very specific. What I'm noticing is a lot of early stage companies who have this idealistic notion of building a medical device, but they have zero money allocated to regulatory or quality management. They haven't even built any of the technical documents. And so that tells me they don't have a complete understanding of the hurdles to get to market. So I will back off. I will provide feedback and say, there are some things that you're going to have to do. You're not going to be able to hit the market without getting through these doors. And so go and concentrate on that, study up, and then come back.
I mean, as it turns out, it's still a really constructive way of telling them, well, you're not ready right now, but here's a direction to go forward in.
Founders don't know what they don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
So give them the information that they need, and they might come back and surprise you.
Yeah, and especially for first-time founders, I don't think there is like a rigid playbook that they can just follow step by step, because essentially it's a different journey for everyone.
It is.
And although there is some guidance, there are still some points, some like tweaks and some like pivotal points that they could still miss, right?
Sure.
Speaking of the numbers, it seems like there's some ambiguity there. Like they say there's like a cap, but that's not the real cap. So, are there any sort of tricks that venture capitalists perhaps use to sort of judge the realism of these numbers?
Sure. The most traditional way is to look at the total addressable market, your TAM. How big is the market? You want it to be as big as possible so that the serviceable, addressable market, the SAM, makes sense. It's really difficult to sell a product. So you want to make sure that the market is big enough to make sense for even raising capital. Because there's a difference here. There's a difference between a slow growth company and a startup. And you need to make a decision about what you're going to be. You only want to raise capital if you have a product that needs an injection of capital in order to scale incredibly quickly. Don't raise capital if your company's not going to do that. Just keep all the equity,
Yeah, keep all the equity. Before co-founding Roga, you mentioned you worked at a Neurotech company building brain stimulation wearables for cognitive enhancement. What were your biggest takeaways from that experience, and did that inform your work at your own startup in any way?
When you're an employee, it's a much different experience than when you are an executive of a company or a founder. When you are a founder, sky's the limit. You get to push anything and everything. You have to push everything. So it's a hard question to answer because I was an employee. I was a set role. I was in a bubble. I wasn't allowed to reach out and experience anything else. What it did give me, it gave me the beginning of a very solid network, because I had to travel so much for them, and I got to meet all the neurotech players. Everyone I've ever wanted to meet, I got to meet, and that company paid for my travel. That was the best part of it. If I were to give anyone advice about building your career, potentially becoming a founder, your network has to be as big as possible. And I just want to mention that for any success that I've had in my career, all of this success has come at the invitation of others. I've never gotten a job from a job posting. I've gotten a job through conversation. People open doors. That's why I'm constantly talking to people, because people will open doors for you.
Yeah. And I think that's advice we've constantly heard. You're only as good as a network.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah. So, Dr. Smith, you do hold a PhD in neuroscience and have an extensive academic research background, right? How essential do you think your graduate training was for launching a neurotech venture? And as someone who kind of got her hands dirty in the startup world and entrepreneurship during undergrad, I'm particularly interested in hearing your thoughts about this. Do you think someone without a master's or a PhD has the essential skill set or the knowledge base to be successful in, let's say, a health tech or a neurotech venture?
I would say if someone doesn't want to do a master's or a PhD but is business savvy, they could easily go into the consumer product stream, the health consumer product stream, but they need to build out a team with expertise. It's really difficult to convince an investor or show your customers that you know what you're doing. If you're going to build a medical device company, one of the founders is going to have to be an MD PhD. In order to provide, this is just my opinion, or one of your high-level C-suite executives is going to have to be a PhD or an MD, because you're trying to validate that product and give confidence to investors and consumers that you are building something that's based in science and based in reality. And it's really hard to do that if you don't have those credentials behind your name. Also, early stage startups, we don't have any capital. So you're gonna have to heavily rely on your own skills in order to build components of the company. If I had to hire someone to build our technical files, you're going into hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to get through that process. And I was able to do it myself, and so I saved all that money. It's just depending upon the nature of your business, and how risky is it. So if you're building a medical device, there's risk inherently involved in that. You're just trying to de-risk your company as much as possible. You can de-risk it through your credentials.
I see. So I guess also from a founding perspective, right? It adds credibility into the founder team if they kind of have these credentials behind their names too, right?
Yeah, I think that my academic history was a big advantage for us raising money.
I see. Thank you.
What do health consumer products look like? So you mentioned that for a business savvy person, they can still enter into the health consumer product space. So what are those products like?
So we have a very successful wellness-based company here in Toronto called Interaxon. And that is a wearable device that it helps consumers to learn how to meditate through neurofeedback. So it's an EEG headband across the forehead with a companion app, and you can learn how to meditate, learn how to increase your alpha brain waves through a game in the app.
Through a game?
It's through a game.
Wow.
That is recording your EEG brain oscillations, and it's looking specifically at alpha brain waves. So through relaxation, you increase alpha brain waves, and you're influencing the sound in the game. Can you quiet the birds down? You have to learn how to increase alpha brain waves to quiet those birds down, or quiet the wind. And this company's been around for 13, 14 years. They're very successful. But the CEO of the company didn't have to have a PhD. They just had to have a passion. And I'm sure that they have other academics in the founder team or in the C-suite executives, but this is an example of If you have a passion, you can make it happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that company up after this.
Right, so based on our conversation so far, we clearly see that you successfully moved between academia and industry. What advice do you have for students or researchers thinking about making that leap for themselves?
Hopefully you can be really clear with where you want to land in industry. You want to have interest in what you're about to do, because it's another slog. You're going to end up in positions that maybe don't really excite you, but it's a way for you to step a toe into industry. But it's going to come from conversation. It's never going to come from a job posting, because we are so specific. You are so specific in what your talents are. It's never going to show up in a job posting. So just get out there. Thank God for LinkedIn. Start reaching out to people. And what I suggest is find people on LinkedIn that are doing something that you're interested in and reach out to them. And the conversation is going to be all about them. You want to reach out with authenticity. Say, I'm very interested in what you do. Do you have 15 minutes to hop on a call? Would love to hear more about your career and the job that you do at XYZ company. And then at the end of that, say 10 minutes in, they're always going to ask about you. And they want to know, what are you interested in? And so you just planted a seed. And that seed is probably not going to grow for 6 to 12 months. But you've at least let someone know out there what you're good at, what you're interested in, so that that person in that similar industry will keep an eye out.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and I think that's also one that we've been hearing a lot, that oftentimes, especially students like ourselves, feel intimidated to just reach out to complete strangers on LinkedIn and be like, I'm really interested in your work in this area, but it is actually a nice thing. And I also heard that people love to talk about what they love.
They do. And I was very nervous as well. Even coming out of the PhD, I felt very confident in my own work, but talking to people, I'm right in the middle of, I'm on a toe of extroversion, but I'm right in the middle. I'm highly introverted, I am extroverted as well. Being an academic, you get to indulge in your introversion. You don't have to be highly verbal when you're an academic. And so I hadn't had any opportunity to exercise the muscle of extroversion. So coming out, trying to get into private industry, and knowing that I would have to have lots of conversations with different people. Oh, I was laying on the ground with my legs up the wall because I was so nervous about being on a phone call with a stranger. But the more you do it, the more enjoyable it becomes. It's just a muscle that you have to make stronger.
Yeah, fair enough. So what is the single most important thing someone can do to accelerate their career? And I'm asking this from a point where I just graduated from U of T last week actually, and I'm super early on in my career. So do you have any advice?
Yeah, just get out and participate and meet as many people as possible. So we've got it depends on what you want to do, but so many organizations, so many startup meetups, tech events, just, you don't have to pay to show up at these events. You try to find people that can help open the door to get into a paid event, or you go to free events, lots hosted by, say, Deloitte, or I'm going to a Deloitte breakfast tomorrow morning. I'm just getting out to meet people in the industry that you're primarily interested in, and keep showing up at these events so people know your face.
Mm-hmm.
The more people that know you, people will open doors.
Yeah. And to be honest, even from the point that I am at right now, I can see that all of my friends are just like in common WhatsApp group chats are sharing a lot of these kinds of events, and they're like, oh, if you're on the wait like seeing these sparks of network showing up in our lives this early, and it's great to hear.
And I still show up. Even though I have a strong network, I still show up because there's still people to meet.
So many interesting people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think just last question about academia, because I don't think we touched upon this. Innovation has sort of been in your blood for a while. Even at the University of Waterloo, before anything concerning startups, you created the first virtual anatomy and physiology course. So what motivated you to innovate within a traditional academic space?
I know it's always something, it's so difficult because academic spaces are not traditionally interested in innovation and changing. So they were in a difficult position, so they had no choice but to change. They really needed an online human anatomy and physiology course. They needed it. There was a particular stream of individuals taking a certificate stream, and they needed this course. So they hired me. I think that people were just talking amongst themselves in the department, and I was just finishing up my PhD. And my supervisor heard that they were on the hunt for someone that could do this, and so that's how I ended up getting the job. I was interested in, I've got some coding skills. This is back in the day when there was no plug and play, nothing. You had to know how to code. You had to know how to find a way to create what looked a PowerPoint slide presentation overlaid with your voice that people could watch as an MP4. It was not done. It didn't exist. So I had to find a way to create it. And I'm comfortable with technology and learning platforms, and I just overlaid all these platforms. I was the first faculty member at Waterloo who did not have to rely on the continuing education department to create any of the content or create the modules. And again, it was just fun.
It goes to show that innovation can be sort of in any field, no matter how traditional or conventional. We are moving on. We are super excited about the future of Neurotech. And we have a host of questions about that. So, what excites you most about the future of AI and technology in mental health care? Are there any technologies or trends on your radar that what you think we're not paying enough attention to?
Yeah, so super early days of building tech for mental health disorders. So we know that anxiety is the #1 mental health condition around the world. But we don't really have many tools for people who are trying to cope. So Roga is a very early stage solution, but I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Because tech has become so economical and accessible for people to build, in their own spaces. The first prototype of Roga was built in a kitchen. I'm just excited for how accessible and economical building technology is nowadays, because that's only in very recent history. You had to really rely on these huge corporations like Medtronic or Boston Scientific to build technology because they had the capital to do it, but now we can be scrappy about it. Remind me of the rest of the question.
Yeah. Is there something that they're not paying attention to in Neurotech right now that you think we should pay attention to?
I don't know if it's an issue of not paying attention. It's just I don't think we have enough people working on problems because it's intimidating to think that maybe I'll be a founder, maybe I'll build a company. People have lots of responsibilities in their life. When you come out, graduate from university, you might have student debt and you might have to seek a traditional position in order to attract, I had student debt. You have these responsibilities that might limit you in your choices. So I think that it affects so many people that we don't have enough medtech startups in Canada.
Mm.
We also have a lot of hurdles that startups have to get over, which is unique to the Canadian medtech ecosystem here. We have way more hurdles in Canada than any other country. And that's intimidating. Most people won't start a medtech company.
Mm.
So I think that it's just getting through this red tape issues, helping startups to find their way more efficiently, so that others will come into the community.
Yeah. So do you think it's the regulatory red tape that's the...
Yes.
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 Mm. All right. Shifting gears a little bit, you were a part of the Creative Destruction Lab,
Mm-hmm.
which is very exciting to hear, and especially for me because next year I'm going to be part of the CDL Advanced course, interning with these startups over the academic year. So could you share what that experience was like, both the challenges and opportunities it presented?
Mm-hmm. So the Creative Destruction Lab, I was in the neuro stream. It was the most challenging incubator I've ever participated in. It was a very out-of-the-box experience. So there was 20 neurotech startups in my cohort. You attend 4 sessions, plus the super session, dispersed over 9 months. Session 1 and 4 were live in person at Roga. So you're put into 4 small group meetings. These are 15-minute sessions with maybe 3 to 4 mentors. There's about 50 mentors in CDL. And you pitch them very quickly, and then you talk about your most pressing issues in the company, and they help. So you're in 3 to 4 of those small group meetings, and then you all meet up in the large group meeting where 50 mentors are in there, and all the founders and students are sitting just listening. There's not a lot of talking from founders in CDL. You're maybe given a couple of minutes, but they speak about your company, they know your pain points, they come up with solutions, and then they assign you objectives. You're given 3 objectives to complete in 8 weeks before the next session. By session 2, people are getting eliminated. It's very cutthroat.
Oh, wow.
It's only about maybe a 50% graduation rate. So if you're not hitting your objectives, you're just let go.
If I'm a student in a startup that got eliminated, what happens to me?
Students don't get eliminated.
Okay.
Founders get
Okay, that's good.
I guess that's why it's called Creative Destruction Lab. That's the first time I've heard of that. Wow.
Are you still in touch with any of the mentors or founders?
Yes, I would say that CDL gave me my most strongest mentor connections. So now that I've moved on from my own company, I have reached out to all of my CDL mentors to see where my career will go next.
Wow. I'm going to meet them soon, pretty excited.
Well, I mean, as difficult as it sounds, it seems like it's given you, again, network, which is a really common point in all of our discussion. And I'm glad that your experience was like that. Kind of circling back to one point that you made around female founders and them only consisting like the 3% of the entire venture capital being generated. You are a female founder yourself, building technology solutions for today as well as for future. And has the gender lens ever shaped your vision, mission, your product, or the way that you kind of like approach this space?
So luckily, I come from a family who has never, ever brought up discussion points according to gender. I was never even told that I could do anything and everything that I ever wanted. Nothing was just said. I was just given the opportunity to do whatever I wanted, and my parents facilitated anything I was interested in. So I never had any thoughts or notions implanted within my psyche that I was doing something odd or out of character for my gender. I also had a very good example of someone in my family who was someone I looked up to. So my aunt, my father's sister, was one of the very first female VPs in big corporate America in the 70s and 80s. And because we never talked about gender in our family, it's interesting that I had a distinct memory of seeing her walk out of her office building, and I knew she was doing something unusual and impactful. I didn't know, I couldn't, connect the dots at that time, but she really paved the way for the rest of us. And so having that experience growing up and being in grad school without very many females, being in STEM, I'm very used to being one of the only females. Every time I show up at like a tech event, I can be the only female that shows up. But I have this inner knowing that it doesn't matter, that I will make the thing happen anyway, despite any hurdles. So have I experienced anything overtly because I am female? I would say nothing that I've noticed overtly.
Yeah.
It could totally be happening and I'm oblivious to it. But because I have so much confidence in my ability to get things done, it's not on my radar. It happened overtly in high school. 2 female instructors that I had in high school overtly said to me, "You shouldn't go to university. You know it's going to be difficult." And I did listen to them initially. I didn't go to university right out of high school because I thought that it was going to be too difficult. But thank God I went anyway. My parents never ascribed to that notion. They just thought, oh, you're going to go when you want to go. You're going to go when it's right for you. And I went, and it was the best experience ever. I was incredibly good at it. So that was the only time when I had experienced a gender bias. And interesting, it came from female course instructors.
Yeah, I lost words when you mentioned that, because at those ages, you have the self-confidence and you have the internal strength, but I do know that a lot of people might struggle just because of role model at that age and just like telling them not to do something.
Yeah. Or when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna have kids? Like that pressure. That's why there's so few female founders, because there's other responsibilities in life that are overriding the experience.
I see. Yeah. To be honest, sorry, I just got stuck on that point that you made around the high school story, but I'm glad that you made the decision to go to university.
Me too.
You're here where you are right
And
now.
I think that if anyone, if you have the notion or the interest in something, you've got to do it.
Yeah.
You've got to try, despite what other people say.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess for our listeners who are listening to this podcast right now, who are young neuroscientists or who are early stage startup founders, do you have any general advice or any skills that you think they should be focusing on right now?
Just get in there, get the work done, go as fast as possible, reach as many people as you can. And the first startup may not be successful, and that's okay. It's going to lead to the next thing that's going to work.
That's great advice, and I do think I was once told a story where one of the founders that an investor was investing in actually failed, in their first venture.
Absolutely.
And that venture capitalists were still insistent on investing in the same founder who failed the first time. And the founder was like, why would you do that? I just ruined your entire funding in me.
Because it's so interesting that for investors who have been in the industry for many, many years, for any of the mentors and any of these incubators, they know that close to 98% of startups fail. It's the natural process. You've got to get out there and try, but if you discover that you don't have a really good product market fit, or your go-to-market strategy just it's not working, it's natural that the company is going to shudder.
Yeah.
And that's okay. When I stepped away from my company, I felt embarrassed that I was going to step away. I didn't want to tell my mentors or investors that I was stepping away. But as soon as it's like that, it was not a problem at all, because this is what happens. And everyone has been so excited. They're like, fantastic. I'd love to see what you're going to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, if anything, if you have the core skill set and the confidence in yourself, even if your first venture fails, you kind of grow up and you learn something from that failure, and you become more resilient to challenges in your next one.
Absolutely. You see the mistakes coming.
Yeah.
You've already lived through them, so you can move even faster the next time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and it happens I watch Shark Tank, and often in Shark Tank you see the same founder coming 2 seasons later being like, it didn't work, but I have a new idea for you.
Yeah.
And they listen and they often invest. So it's
Yes.
really sort of purpose for you to get in there. Even if you feel it's okay, you learn something and move on.
Mm-hmm.
You lead to the next thing. You've navigated a career with a lot of uncertainty and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
What's the moment in your career when you felt most uncertain and pushed through the anyway?
Have I ever felt certain? I think life is full of uncertainty, and the only thing that we can rely on is resilience. I've never felt, I think it's because I have experienced so many things that I have never stayed still for long enough to feel that everything is okay. I keep putting myself in these predicaments of constantly being in a seat of learning, which is the zone of uncertainty.
It's also quite adventurous to constantly put yourself in that
Yeah.
space, and it's rewarding in its own way. Uncertainty can be rewarding in its own way.
I just want to experience as much as possible. There's so
Yeah.
many opportunities out there, and I like the chaos of it all. I don't need consistent routine.
Okay, another sort of quick question for you. What's a book, podcast, or researcher that recently blew your mind?
Blew my mind. I think I'm too pragmatic for my mind to be blown. I would say that if I were to give people advice on what to read if they're thinking about being a founder, is Venture Deals by Feld and Mendelsohn. I think it's the foundational read that everyone needs.
Venture Deals. Okay, we're going to look that up. Do you have any final thoughts or wisdom that you'd like to share with students who are maybe worrying about their future career development?
Try not to worry about it. You're going to land where you're going to land. And you're never stuck anywhere. Just learn as much as possible in any job that you are in. Meet as many people as possible. Working with humans is difficult. Everyone has emotion, and that's okay. You're not causing their emotion. You just try and stay calm and level-headed, and have some fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the conversation.
My pleasure.
That's a wrap for this episode of NeurON Air. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation and left with some electrifying insights. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to stay updated on future episodes, and don't forget to follow Neurotech U of T on social media for more cutting-edge content. If you have questions or topics you'd love us to explore, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay neurocurious and keep pushing the boundaries of neurotech with us. This is NeurON Air, signing off.